Good evening and welcome to a very wet Road Atlanta for round 6 of season 2 of the Platinum Pilot Series. Both championships are still razor thin, with a single point separating the two LMP2 lead cars and only 10 points in GT3. My name is Taylor Mills. Alongside me, as a surprise, is Olivia Hayward with Carmen Sienna pushing the buttons for us tonight. And yeah, Road Atlanta is the track that lies ahead of us tonight. It's a circuit that needs absolutely no introduction as the host of the season finale of the real life IMSA Championship that has thrown up so many dramatic finishes over the year, and we're certainly hoping for another dramatic finish out there tonight. Liv, Road Atlanta is a circuit that you and me have plenty of experience at in plenty of different machinery, and we certainly have our own stories to tell at this track. But I think the biggest question that can be answered here tonight is, what is the key to success at Road Atlanta?
Survival, if you want it in one word. I mean, at the best of times, this is a track that chews you up, spits you out, especially in multi-class. We've seen so many instances here in real life and in the sim. And with the conditions as treacherous as they are right now, track's set to be wet for the entirety of this 90-minute race. It is going to be absolutely vital that you manage that aggression. You play it a little bit safer, drive at sort of 8/10 if you need to, just to make sure that you are one of the cars left standing at the checkered flag.
We still have a couple of cars circulating as you do join us just at the end of qualifying. I certainly assume Miguel Almeida and his teammate Diego Teodoro out there getting used to the conditions, of course, taking advantage of all 4 laps that they had to get down the lap times that they did. But any extra time you can have on a wet track surface is certainly something you're going to want. Of course, no handling changes for the GT3s into the season, but certainly one for the LMP2s that I'm honestly surprised that none of the LMP2 drivers are taking advantage of. But Platinum Competition has thrown up a lot of wet races for us so far this season. I think we've had 3 in PPS alone, and a couple of them certainly changeable conditions in the Platinum Endurance Championship. But as the rain has subsided and stopped here in Braselton, let's have a look at the grid tonight and see exactly where everyone lines up. On that famed pole position is your championship leader, Andre Rosa for NGC Rodriguez Gas, and he lines up alongside Bart Mattia, who lost the championship lead last time out in Aragon. Didier Fayado gets their best qualifying position of the year, lines up the first XPD racing car in P3. Mikhail Sundstrom, your winner from Long Beach, lines up in 4th place, a great qualifying from them. But championship hopeful Alberto Garcia Blasco, only good enough for 5th tonight, so he's going to have some work to do if he wants to get up to the back of Rosa. Pedro Paquette, your winner in race 1, lines up 6th, with Sebastian Isenberg from Twin Turn Sim Racing off the back of great success during the Prismatic Motorsport Race for a Cause, only good enough for 7th, alongside a brand new entry for tonight, Benjamin Rush for Writer Engineering Esports. And a little bit further down the grid, I think we've skipped a couple of places there, so we could scroll back up and have a look at 9th place. A couple more ticks, we're almost there. There we go. Victor Sonengren for the other Twin Turn Sim Racing car will line up 9th alongside Sonic Racing Team's Leandro Mendez in 10th. Stefan Le Guin, the lead Squadra Veloce by Eagle car, is up there in 11th, with Carlos Acosta, the SRP Racing Team, up in 12th. You have Daniel Fascia for SNM lining up alongside TMR's Alex Miller in 13th and 14th, with Kevin Hires for SCK Racing lining up alongside Carlos Pereira in the sister SNM car. Taking a scroll down the grid, we can see exactly how everyone else is looking to line up there tonight, as we do actually make our way into the GT3 field, Liv. A short one.
Yeah, it is Federico Faria in the Sonic Racing Team Black entry, lining up on that pole position ahead of Rubens Lorente in the XBD Racing GT3, a stalwart of the Platinum Endurance Championship. A 3rd McLaren lines up behind as a sister car, Miguel Almeida in the Sonic Racing Team Red entry, ahead of the Audi R8 of Writer Engineering Blue. That'll be Jan Kurbs. Look to see what he can do from 4th on the grid here. Diego Teodoro in the Sonic Racing Team Silver entry lines up 5th, with Philip Spares in the Writer Orange car line up behind, and then the final 2 cars to make up your grid for tonight's race. It'll be the NGC by Rubis Cass, driver of Arthur Loureiro, and the Reiter Mint driver of Adrian Hanivitz.
Yeah, the full formation lap here at Road Atlanta certainly giving the drivers time to get a bit more used to the conditions out there on track tonight. A couple of drivers to keep an eye on that have historically good results in these conditions are the likes of, where is he? He's on the list somewhere. Pedro Piquet, who won out in Spa 2 races ago. Don't forget Miguel Almeida, who can perform in any conditions. Jan Kurbs, of course, winning his first race in the Platinum Pilot Series last season at the Hockenheimring, and with a very surprise performance at Spa, taking his first win of the season. We did have that other writer engineering entry, which I'll find him on my list and I could read his name out properly. Adrian Hanivitz, who by all accounts I don't think is on the grid, so may not be taking the start here at Red Atlanta.
Been having some connection issues, maybe struggling to get that machine working in these wet weather conditions. So if he does manage to take the grid, it will be from pit lane, unfortunately. But already lined up shotgun on the field. Won't have any spots to lose out of that one, and maybe would avoid some carnage coming through the S's on lap number 1.
That's certainly a possibility here at Road Atlanta, as it does get very tight at the top of the hill. Andre Rosa and Bart Mathieu will be the first 2 drivers to take on that uphill turn 2, turn 3 section before sending it over that curve, as so many like to do, and making their way back down the hill through turns 4
Sorry to interrupt,
5.
On my end, Federico Faria, the pole sitter for class, is also not present on the racetrack.
So that means Rubens Lorente will be promoted to pole position as the sun pokes its way through the clouds here at Road Atlanta. Andre Rosa will lead the field down through turn 11 and turn 12 towards that green flag. We have 90 minutes of racing here in Georgia, and wait for it, we are underway. I think it's a very tentative start for all of the Amplitudes as they try to get that power down with some very almost archaic traction control. Most of the field looking like they're making their way through very cleanly, but we've got some side-by-side racing between nearly on pace and XBD's Andre Garcia Blasco, but Liv, the GT3 field is making its way around that final corner.
They sure are, coming out of turn number 12 under the Michelin gantry and to the start zone. Rubens Lorente does a nice clean getaway here and is going to bring the field down in towards turn number 1. They're going to streak through. It looks like Federico Faria is part of the pit lane and will join the rest of this group, but up front it's a pretty clean getaway so far. No real drama to speak of in the early running of this race. The few cars dropping all the way back at the early portions here.
Yes, a very short field in GT3, of course, helping them all get through that first sector relatively cleanly, but already Miguel Almeida applying the pressure to Rubens Lorente. Lorente, of course, inheriting that pole position from Faria, who didn't make it to the grid, but Almeida with the run to the outside of turn 6. Is he going to have a go? He keeps the nose in, and he's given the space, right? Rubens Lorente forced onto the curbs a little bit. It'll be very slippy out there, but Almeida is going to stay side by side through turn 7 on the run down towards 10A and 10B. Lorente will slot back in front, but Miguel Almeida already mounting a charge.
Yeah, and these two are already a second ahead of the field right now as they're going to come down towards turn 10, this chicane section. Maybe the most tricky braking zone on the circuit in these conditions. Downhill, he's going to slot in. You see the defensive line on that the less rubbered-in surface for Lorente. He's going to streak his way through and very tentatively get down the hill once again to the start-finish line. Quick update on Arthur Loureiro, who started at the back of the field, had a spin on the pace lap, is already down in pit lane, and I think the team put dry tyres on that car. Definitely a mistake there on the setup, and unfortunately that could be early day done for 98, but it's around. Miguel Almeida catches a wet patch on the inside, catch that
Rubens Lorente.
surface. It was Rubens Lorente, and into the barrier pretty hard there. It's going to get rolling once again, but it's going to have damage to that right-hand side and might take an early pit stop to take some repairs here.
Wow, what a dramatic start here in Road Atlanta. That is, of course, Rubens Lorente, who was challenging for the championship lead that gap will now extend by a good chunk more points and make Miguel Almeida a lot more comfortable at the top of the standings. Here comes a replay for you. You see the rear end of that McLaren just can't stay in line through turn one. Lorente can't hold on to it, and it just doors the barrier on the outside of the corner. Of course, not so much time to figure out the track conditions here in as little time as they've had in as they are. We'll get another angle of it here. As you thought, Liv, it might have been a little bit of a touch on the puddle through turn one.
Yeah, if not the puddle itself, definitely that rubbered-in groove on the apex. It's so tricky, and the rear end just gave up a little bit, and then the overcorrection ends up sending him out into that gravel, into that barrier. No meatball being displayed, but we'll wait and see how much performance has been taken off that McLaren 720S. As at the front of the field, it is now Sonic Racing Team in a 1-2 with De Almeida and Teodoro. Actually, Jan Curbs is going to fight his way through as Teodoro spun around on the front stretch, in fact. Contact between the 11 and the 16 of Jan Curbs. Yeah, we're certainly going to replay that one to find out what happened as Rubens Lorente arrives on the scene into the rear diffuser of Jan Curbs. But here comes that replay for you. It is a bit of a pinch from the 11 who just clips the front corner of Jan Curbs' car. And there's that secondary contact just after the start-finish line as well that sends both drivers into a spin. And if we stick with this just a moment longer, you'll see Curbs rejoin the track relatively slowly. And Lorente just makes absolutely no effort to avoid the stricken Audi R8. And goodness me, Liv, that was quite the misjudgment there. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I understand in that spot you're already in a bad spot. You've already lost a lot, just hoping that he can get through and gain some spots. But ultimately, I think that's going to be day done for Lorente, and the day going from bad to worse. Also, Jan Curbs out of this one, and what was already a short GT3 field has suddenly been cut to almost nothing, as our LMP2s have been miraculously much more drama-free so far. Yeah, speaking of the LMP2s, it is Andre Rosa still at the front of the field. He was our first repeat race winner in LMP2 last time out at Aragon, and he is already 3 seconds clear of Bart Mattia. Of course, that connection loss racing crew just been so consistent throughout the season and doing a great job to just finish races, which has been good enough to keep them up in P3 in the championship as it stands, but of course just not having the pace here in the wet conditions, as Didier Fiado has actually made his way through in the braking zone for turn 10 and demoted Bart Mattia into 3rd place, as that XBD race in LMP2 looks like he's set to take off after Andre Rosa and perhaps mount a little bit of a charge. But Bart Mattia still under the rear wing of Fiado as they make their way down the start-finish straight for the 5th time. Mattia having a peek to the inside of turn 1, doesn't actually go for it, but Fiado a little bit wide through that first apex, of course, avoiding that puddle, and the slippery rubbered in line just stays ahead. Half a second is the gap between 2nd and 3rd, and Pedro Piquet looks to be next on the scene to take a nibble out of Mattia's position. Yeah, it's a very much a breakaway for Andre Rosa here, already 3 seconds up the road and looking to really take control of this one. Further behind is his 3-car pact for 2nd place. SBD Racing still with 1 bullet in the chamber in LMP2 with Didier Fiado. And then the battle from 5th on back is still very tight indeed, about 8 cars all fighting for positions there, with Mikael Sundström the leader of that train. I've noticed a lot of tyre tracks through turn 10, drivers overshooting in that chicane, but obviously able to recover without any damage without losing too much time. But I think that's definitely the most dangerous spot to try and make the overtake happen, as the LMP2s actually are coming through traffic now. Just took the words right out of my mouth, Liv. I'm just looking a bit further down the LMP2 field. XBD's Alberto Garcia Blasco just sort of struggling at the moment. That is, of course, your 2nd place driver in the championship, who is looking to challenge Andre Rosa for that crown. Of course, it is a guaranteed brand new champion in LMP2 in the 2nd season of Platinum Pilot Series competitions. Miguel Almeida gets a little bit wiggly out of turn 1, is going to leave himself vulnerable to the 33, sliding through on the inside of turn 3. Made that one relatively easy for him, as now he's got Bart Mattia for company, who's looking to try and get through on that McLaren GT3, as it is actually going to force Pedro Piquet to stay behind
I think that's actually Diego Teodoro, never mind Miguel Almeida, but Pedro Piquet has to be patient through the S's up to turn 5. But Matthew just giving himself a little bit more breathing room, so after losing that position to Fiado, can just take a breath, get back in the rhythm and find some grip out there on track.
Yeah, and obviously a very thin, spread out GT3 field, but at a track like this, you can't really help the LMP2s make the move. You can't really dive out of the way of them, especially with this very tricky surface. So these prototypes are going to have to deal with whatever traffic ends up in their way, and it will be Miguel Almeida who's streaking through turn number 1 here, and very soon our GT or LMP2 leaders will have to deal with that driver who has everything to lose here, but not really much say in how it happens.
We're just getting shots of Mikael Sundstrom coming over the top of the hill. As just behind him, though, that was Garcia Blasco squeezing through one of the LMP3s that clearly wasn't happy with that move. A bit tight, a bit close for comfort in these conditions. We've alluded to it a little bit, Liv, but there are difficulties to driving in these conditions. Those wet tires can only do so much about making the track surface easier to drive on.
Yeah, obviously you have the adjustments to the traction control and the ABS, but you mentioned it. This Dallara LMP2 model is from all the way back in 2017. It's been modified, obviously, since then. Some power reductions that I think drivers will be a bit thankful for right now, but it's not quite got the same level of technology that the modern hypercars would, or indeed some of these more recent GT3 editions that are really all based on those TC assists. And let's not forget, they have state-of-the-art ABS that the prototypes are not allowed to have. So very tricky conditions, and again, these tricky braking zones like into turn number 10, that's going to be where the danger's going to lie. And especially if you have a car to your inside, you better hope that they don't miss the braking point and clatter into the side of you.
Yeah, and that's before we even talk about the rubbered and racing line, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, with it being so wet for so long here, there is a chance that there's just not very much recent rubber laid down. But even besides that, the track as a whole tends to be a little bit slippery, a little bit smoother on that traditional line from years and years of use. This is a pretty old track surface from what I remember, and I've got to imagine that the section down through that final sector is also a little bit of havoc from when Formula Drift comes here every year. We talk about it at Long Beach and how it can play a role through the final sector, but this is also one of those big events in that series.
Yeah, of course, you have that loop section up at just after turn 10, that was built purely for Formula Drift, so they could come to Road Atlanta and have a nice, cool section of drift track that they can get out there and go drifting on. And I will say, I feel like Road Atlanta is one of the coolest events on the Formula Drift calendar, but sadly, we're not here to talk about cars going sideways intentionally today.
We have to talk about one going sideways unintentionally. Philip Spares in the right orange car ran wide, caught I think just the runoff and the painted line on the entry of turn number 1, and is down on pit lane taking a meatball repair here. So GT3 field cut down to 3 on the lead lap right now.
Yeah, I think that was after one of the Twin 10 sim racing cars squeezed through on him there. That he got a little bit out of shape, a little bit frustrated with the LMP2s, and just kind of lost focus of getting the car through turn 1. And again, touching that white painted line at a surface that is not grippy in the dry, and it's certainly a lot less grippy in the wet, with a not at all porous track surface at all. Nothing for the tire to grip onto. It just makes the back end step out.
And let's not forget, that was that LMP2 to the inside, but there was also an LMP2 that had just made the move ahead. Visibility is an absolute nightmare in sort of wet conditions like this. The spray that gets kicked out from the wet weather tires off the car ahead. I think he just lost where he was in the racetrack, lost the braking point, and just drifted off onto the left-hand side as the track sort of hooks in to enter turn number 1.
Yeah, it's one of the tricky things about driving in the wet weather conditions. You'll see a lot of drivers doing things they wouldn't often do in the dry, especially with the way that spray gets kicked up by Amity. Big defense into turn 10, and there is contact just before the apex of 10 as Pedro Paquette barrels into the back of the connection lost racing driver and continues on. But Bart Mattia turned around in the gravel. That is not a good start to the race for that driver.
Yeah, and probably a fair amount of damage onto the rear diffuser of that number 5. Let's have a look at the replay here. And just look at the line that Pedro Paquette is taking. Ducks to the outside, try and find a lane to sort of offset the braking, trying not to run into the back of Bart Mattia. But I think, as we were saying, just caught those right-hand side tyres on that rubbered-in line, lost the braking performance, and just spun back to the inside right where he was. You see, ducks in, and then the rear end just flips out slightly and gets sent back over to the left-hand side.
I will say there's a little bit of something that I didn't quite like about the way Bart Mattia was defending that one then, all the way to the inside for the braking zone for 10, but then just squeezing it back out to the right-hand side of the circuit as Paquette had committed to the braking point for that first apex. So I think a little bit of careless driving from the connection lost racing driver there ended up getting him turned around and in the gravel as Paquette got to continue on and has actually passed Jack Fiado for P2 in this race, only 5.5 seconds off your overall race lead.
Yeah, it looks like about 8 seconds down for Bart there, but rear end looking mostly in one shape. I think a light enough touch that it was just a spin as the rest of the field does streak through on the start-finish stretch. This is the battle for second place now, as they're going to catch up to a GT3 here. This is Artur Lara after taking those repairs for the incident at turn number 1, and so tricky on the entry to the S's. You don't want to be stuck behind as you come through this downhill section. So a very late move, very brave move from Didac Fajardo just to squeeze through and get the nose ahead to try and chase down and prevent an NGC 1-2 from forming here.
It's one of those things that you need to do when you're managing traffic here at Road Atlanta. You need to be decisive. Hesitation is one of the biggest killers in traffic management at a track with so few overtaking opportunities, and especially with the braking zone as short as the one up at the top of the hill at turn 3, because you have turn 1 where you have to scrub off so much speed, and then it's a curved braking zone as well, so that just makes it even trickier, especially in these conditions. There will be a little bit more grip on the right hand side of the circuit where the track is less rubbered in, but that doesn't make it any less easier to commit to the brakes and squeeze your way through. So it was a great bit of driving from Didac Fajardo, and I'm sure he'll be proud of himself for that one, but I feel like there was definitely an element of Artur Lara just sort of letting that one happen.
Yeah, it's so tricky. We are, of course, now 15 minutes into the race, got about 12 laps under the belt, and one thing about these wet conditions that it's going to be sort of a twofold in terms of what the strategy is going to be for these drivers is that it first of all shortens or lengthens the fuel stint because you're just completing less laps over the course of a run, but also I would be very surprised if these drivers take a fresh set of wet tyres at their pit stop. I think they're going to want to stay on what they have, even if it's a slightly bit worn. It's going to be nice and hot, and it's going to grip straight back to the track surface when they pull onto pit exit. So I think potentially a very a simple strategy call for these drivers, and I think it should easily be a one-stop for everyone involved in this one, shouldn't it, Taylor?
Oh yeah, certainly, especially with the fact those GT3s can go an hour on that fuel tank. It'll be a relatively easy decision for how many stops those cars make. It's just going to be a question of when they come down pit lane. We know those cars can handle worn tires and wet weather conditions quite well. Again, those modern assists that we've already alluded to really helping them out. Think back to Motorsport last season when all of the GT3s stayed out on dry weather tires, and it looked like it was the decision to make. But big news for all you weather fans, we do have a slight patch of lighter rain making its way towards the surface. It's starting to collapse into about stable to what we've got now. But Liv, I'm looking a little bit further on that weather radar, and I'm seeing spots of yellow.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we've had it's been a very patchy weather system rolling through Georgia this morning. And that's why we saw that little break in the cloud right as we were gridding for the race. One thing I do want to mention, Pedro Piquet has just gone straight through in the S's. I've noticed that while there wasn't damage...
Is there a turn number through the corner that you cut?
No, of course there isn't.
No.
So that contact with Bart Mathieu, the number 5 car getting away without any damage on that one, but the NGC number 43 with a pretty chunked in front end at this point can't be helping with the performance through that section. Downforce, of course, less important in these conditions, but it's still going to matter. And I think seeing that in the windscreen for Fajardo is going to sort of re-motivate the SBD racing driver and think that, you know what, I've got a chance at this second place here. I can chase this guy down.
Yeah, NGC Rubis Gas, of course, getting the second 1-2 of this championship. One from XBD in Monza and another one from them last time out in Aragon. Currently looking set to repeat that, I think, as well, in the same order as they were last time out. Here we are on board with Daniel Facia for Semper and Amecha in that Dallara P217, and you can see how bad the visibility is in the spray. Those rain lights on the rear of, I think, the twin-turn sim racing car just in front. In fact, I can check my list. Still can't quite see it, but that's it. You can't quite see the rain lights of the car in front, as they do have a little bit of a moment. Does Victor Sonnengren through turn 1, very slow up that hill into turn 3, just feeling that pressure for Facia a little bit. But again, with Facia being so deep in the slipstream, so close to the rear of the car in front, he just can't see what's going on in front of him. Clattering over the curb in the middle of the S's, it may generate an off track, it might generate a slowdown as he pulls over to the right hand side, just looking for not some cooling on the tires. We're not at that stage yet, but certainly just a little bit of visibility down into turn 6.
Yeah, and the thing to remember as well is that you don't have very good visibility of the car ahead, but through their mirrors, they can see you fairly decently. So if you make those moves, first of all, you're getting some vision of the road ahead, but they're also getting vision of you and wondering if this is going to be the time that you go for the lunge to the inside. You sort of keep them on their toes. We're not sure what your intentions are. Maybe not from this far back, but certainly once you're within a couple of tenths of a second. And with how tricky these conditions are, a lot of it does come down to the confidence and the skill on your left foot on the brake pedal. You can take a much deeper lunge than you would otherwise be able to if you can find the purchase with the track on that line and just slip straight by someone.
Yeah, typically, of course, it's advantageous to stand on the brake pedal of these cars and let them use the downforce to get as much braking power through those front wheels as possible without locking. Just watching Sonnengren go for a big slide through turn 4. But in these wet conditions, that braking style turns much more from a downforce car style of braking and kind of shifts its way towards being a rally car style of braking, what they call cadence braking. But never mind that, Sebastian Isenberg making a mistake out of turn 5, coming under all sorts of pressure from Victor Sonnengren, who is right tucked up under his rear wing right now. Isenberg, of course, coming off the back of that LMP2 race victory in the race for a cause at Le Mans last weekend. It was a great performance from Twin Turn Sim Racing, but not quite able to back that up here today. The 32 just ahead of Sonnengren, who is peaking every which way to try and make a move work. Both cars dive to the left-hand side of the circuit as Isenberg moves back across the track to try and get a more optimal racing line through 10A and 10B. It looks like he is mostly recovered from that mistake as his eyes seem firmly forward on the rear end of Benjamin Rush, of course, a series debutant up there in P8, so it's a pretty decent start to his PPS career.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to bear in mind is that I think this session has had about as much rain in it as that entire 24-hour race did at the weekend. As we actually back side by side, Isenberg has actually suddenly charged forward, went for a look on the right for engineering drive, but now you have 4 cars under Atlantic. This invites Daniel Faska into the fight and very much within range. If a car makes a mistake, a little bit of a narrow exit from Sonnengren, and it could end up setting up an opportunity down maybe on the exit of turn number 7 and down the one straightaway. You see him tut up underneath. Is he going to go for a peak in 7? No, he's going to focus on the exit here because both drivers going to have draft. have that slipstream, and it looks like Sonogon's just about gotten the better exit, and is going to have the advantage coming down through turns 8 and 9 and down towards the actual braking zone of turn 10.
These cars, such momentum cars since the changes, that lack of power, that peeling away of the downforce and a little bit of that mechanical grip just means the second you get a little bit out of shape, a little bit out of line, out of your rhythm, is when this car really starts to lose pace. And that's the danger for that Writer Engineering car of Rush at the moment at the head of this 4-car train. If he loses concentration for even a second, especially in one of those rhythm sections all the way down the hill from turns 4 through the S's and up to turn 5, that's when he could lose spots hand over fist, and in a matter of moments find himself from P8 down in P11, because that is the threat that's coming for him at the moment, as he just looks a little bit inconsistent up the hill, as Isenberg is able to catch a good chunk into turn 3, but both of the cars behind Rush just making a couple of mistakes to make their way back down the hill. Because again, we talk about the spray, but the likes of Sonnengren and Fascia have the spray of 2 and 3 cars in front of them to deal with, which of course Isenberg only has the 1.
Yeah, further up the field, a battle for 4th place has suddenly kicked off. Michael Sundström, in the nearly on pace by Raceburden car, actually got a little bit held up down through the S, just caught the XBD GT3 of Rubens Lorente at an awkward time, and that has invited the teammate in another class, Alberto Garcia Blasco, right up to the back of his car, and they're going to fight nose to tail through the final sector now. And then further back, Art Mathieu is actually running the fastest laps of the race, a 23.1 set just a lap ago. So he's going to very quickly get involved in this as well. But there you see Sundström desperate to get the move done. On that is Teodoro, the 3rd place car for Sonic Racing Team. That team 1, 2, 3, the only 3 survivors in this race so far, really. And that is going to give just a little bit of breathing room to Sundström, as Blasco has to wait to make that move in the middle of the S's. That's still a very tight 4-car pack for 8th place, though. We can't really take our eyes off this one for too long, as once again just streaking down through the hill and then back up, and that turn 5 exit curb, you've got to say, normally something to use very heavily, but very dangerous in these conditions, as Isenberg gets a bad run on that curb, and he's going to have to defend to the inside of turn number 6. There's going to be a chance for a crossover, but Daniel can't get it done, and it's going to be once again trying to get the traction down out of 7. He just can't quite get the launch he needs.
Yeah, a bit of unfortunate GT3 positioning for Mikael Sundström. Lorente bringing his teammate back into that fight a little bit. Give him a warning for blocking with a tent on that one. But again, for the weather fans, never mind that. We've got a big move for position down into turn 10. It is a huge dive on Benjamin Rush from Victor Sonnegren, who just about gets it stopped. A massive kick of oversteer up the hill. And we talked about how losing momentum can absolutely kill all the speed you have at this track. As Rush just trying to hold on from Isenberg, from Fascia. It was actually Isenberg who loses the momentum on the way down the hill and falls behind Fascia. So Isenberg now at the tail of this train. Sonnegren moves to the front, and it looks like it's Writer Engineering and Twin Turn Sim Racing with all of the work to do to get back up into P8.
I mean, the twin turn cars were sat in the middle of that pack. Now they're the bread in that sandwich. Further up the field, actually, battle for the race lead going on here. And it looks like Andre Rosa has gotten the T orders call, maybe. Pedro Paquette's at the fastest lap just a minute ago. And very suddenly on the run down towards the turn 10 has made it happen, as that's a spin for the GT3 sister car for NGC. So lots of chopping and changing happening for that team, but it is a new race leader from sitting on the grid, Pedro Daniel Paquette, with not too much fight down into turn number 10.
Yeah, of course, carrying that damage really earlier with Mafia into turn 10, but just taking advantage of these conditions, not having to rely on that front aero so much, probably actually helping him out a little bit. But those track conditions improving as we move into a slightly clearer patch. But drivers, don't get used to it. We have a much heavier band of rain making its way towards this circuit. And as so often is the case with the Tempest weather system, the fact that we can get rain taking a turn for the worst at a moment's notice. Don't get used to these track conditions, kids, because it is about to absolutely chuck it down.
Yeah, and we actually had a big incident for Benjamin Rutsch coming through turns 5 and 6. Just a big sort of mistake, a big snap off the curb of 5, set him in a bad spot, and then spin at turn 6 and sent him down not just to the back of that train, but also behind the SCK car, Kevin Hargers, who he's now got to try and fight his way back through to have a shot back at the top 10.
Yeah, they'll certainly want to do that. There is a big, deep field of LMP2 cars here, 16 of them, in fact. So again, it's always at least a small win to get inside that top 10. And SEK Racing, of course, have had some fantastic results earlier on in the season. We're certainly in that fight in Monza, but the strategy call just not quite working out for them in that case. Unfortunately for them here at Red Atlanta, it's a relatively simple call, as all of the cars in the LMP2 field will be on that one-stop strategy. Here is still that fight for the lead, though, between championship leader Andre Rosa and your opening round winner of Pedro Paquette. Paquette is starting to leave his teammate a little bit. That gap opening up to about 1 and a bit seconds. You can see it live in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen there. As right now, this 1-2 for NGC by Rubis Gas looking relatively comfortable as they're 7 seconds clear of the Jack Fiado.
I mean, if we want to talk about team strategy here, I'm wondering whether there's a fear that Pedro Paquette could get given a penalty for that incident down at turn 10 earlier in the race, and maybe whether Andre Rosa sees the pace on the 43 and goes, I'm not going to hold you up, let's let you pull that gap so you're protected from that if it comes down later in the race. We know that he's maybe the fastest car on track right now. Some good competition in the top 5 in the 122s, but still no one really showing the same performance that Pedro is. But this fight, you're seeing, this is a couple of GT3s that the Battle for 11 is the way back through. And Benjamin Rutsch is still recovering from that earlier incident, is about 7 seconds back from Isenberg and the other twin turn racing pack. Just isn't able to get a move done on Kevin Hargers right now.
Gonna know something kind of insane, but in the best possible way. Last season, me and Amity were and ahhing over whether Sebastian and what's his brother's name? You know, it escapes me. The Isenbergs. We were like, are they brothers? Are they cousins? Like, what's the crack here? And apparently they watched back one of the broadcasts, and they came back to me one day and said, we're twins. It's twin turn sim racing, and I had the biggest facepalm moment in my entire life.
Yeah, that made sense.
Here is a fight for position then between S&M and Taylor Mills Racing. Alex Miller at the head of that little battle with Carlos Pereira, just following that bright blue LMP2 through that first section of the racetrack. Miller not doing so well in these conditions. He's a driver who self-admittedly doesn't do too well when the track slickens up. He's of course relatively new to sports car racing and has certainly been a dab hand in the dry, I can tell you that, but the only way he's going to get faster in these conditions is by driving in them, Liv.
Yeah, and not just drive, but this fight as well, having to focus on the defense of Carlos Pereira. It's always so tricky to focus on the track ahead when you've got this pressure coming in from behind, and Stefan Le Guin is closing into this fight as well in the 147 Squadre Veloce car. So it could have been a bit of a 3-car battle, but I think with the gap behind, it's about just keeping your eyes forward, focusing on the task at hand, and getting through to that pit stop phase where really anything can change. You've really got to time that stop to hopefully avoid some of the traffic at a track like this.
Yeah, he has that vision in front of him as well. Again, to touch on the spray for the 3rd time in about half an hour, he's got that vision in front of him where he can see the road that's coming up and can sort of plan his braking points, turning points, throttle up points a little bit better, where for the likes of Pereira and Michelin being in that spray, it all becomes a little bit reactive, all the way clattering over those curbs for Alex Miller as he comes up on the tail of Diego Teodoro, not quite brave enough to stuff one up the inside of the S's. He's going to have to wait all the way for turn 5, but even then, can't get it done. If Pereira has backed off the entry to that corner enough, he might be able to have a run down to turn 6. It looks like he's going to take into the grass with a little bit of overlap, but he has lost a bit of momentum on the way down to that corner. He's forced to the outside of Diego Teodoro, and Alex Miller will live to fight another day.
Yeah, I mean, this is the crucial thing when it comes to fighting through traffic. Often you can get bunched up to the cars behind if you're being cautious through traffic, but as long as you're the first one to get side by side with them and exit and you time that run correctly, there's just nowhere for them to take that momentum while they're pushing more aggressively. And it seems like for Alex Miller, he's been able to just be the cork in the bottle for long enough to get that move done here. Now XPD Racing's Rumours Lorente, the next car to deal with, coming through 11 and 12. Miller goes to the inside. He's going to get clear before the apex of turn 12. And Carlos Perez sets up for the exit instead. About 0.4 of a second gap, but that is the last bit of traffic for at least a lap here. And Miller can focus on trying to rebuild that momentum as Pereira a little bit tail happy through turn 1. That could be the moment that Alex Miller needs.
Just over 30 minutes gone here at Road Atlanta. The rain continues to pour and gets a little bit heavier. Pedro Paquette leads the way for NGC by Rubis Gas, trailed by his teammate of Andre Rosa, with Didier Fiado rounding out your top 3 in LMP2 as it stands. In GT3, only 3 cars realistically surviving so far, with Miguel Almeida leading that charge over Federico Faria for the sister Sonic Racing team car by 8.5 seconds, with the third Sonic Racing team car rounding out the 3rd spot on that podium as it stands, about 40 seconds off the car in front. A couple more changes of position in LMP2 though, as Kevin Hayes and Benjamin Rush are having a bit of a scrap on the way down the hill through turn 12. There's contact between them as they come out of that corner, as we're watching the fight for at P13 still, but these two side by side down the start finish straight. Rush with the advantageous inside line will carry that momentum through turn 1, but actually it's Hayes who gets a better run up the hill, and Rush is gonna have to tuck in behind. 2 fights happening out there on track at the same time, Liv. Which way do we turn?
I mean, Benjamin Rush, I think, has been using a little too much of the bodywork of that number 58 Dallara so far in this one. Has had a ton of incidents, both drivers making a mess of turn number 5 in different ways. Hayes just goes deep and wide. Rush ends up spinning towards the inside a little bit. They're in a hold position, but they were beating and banding all the way sort of from turn number 10 through into the entry of turn number 2 there. Rush got ahead, but then the run came back, and here it is. You see the 58 already ahead coming into this moment. But if they come side by side, both wanting to fight for as much track position as possible, there's going to be a little bit of contact here, I think, in the braking zone that's misted by that spray. Somehow both cars get through, leaning on each other through 10A, gets ahead in 10B, but the crossover from Benjamin to get to the inside and then down through. We saw the battle sort of in turn number 1 here, but they're still side by side down the start-finish stretch. You see that was Hodges not wanting to stay on that rubbered-in line in turn 1, looking to fight for as much room as possible, and just about gonna hold on through there. He cut back to a lap later, and it's basically the exact same position. Benjamin looking for a move into turn number 2, couldn't quite get it done. And this is a battle, I believe, for P8 a little bit further up the road, and this is kicked off as well. It's the twin-turn sim racing Delta car of Victor Sonogren with Sempre Nameka, as NGC's Pedro Paquette from the lead is going to come down pit lane and kick off the LMP2 pit stop cycle.
That is a little bit too early to be on the 1 stop. We've had Pedro Paquette making questionable strategy decisions before that have worked out in his favor, opting to stay on the same set of wet weather tires that he started this race on and taking those repairs. But we are full focus on the battle for P8 in LMP2. It is Victor Sonegren who leads Daniel Fascia in that number 47 Sempre Nameka car, and just gets it a little bit wrong through turn 12. All of the extra water that's now under his wheels, those track conditions of course worsening in the last minute or so. That sun truly gone behind the clouds as that yellow weather system works its way over the track. And Liv, this is one of those sorts of situations, one of those races where you definitely want some sort of race engineer in your ear to tell you what's going on with the weather.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too difficult if you're a driver, because you know that the call is definitely wet. There's not a strategy decision to be made, but just to know what is going on. As we've had a couple of big incidents here. Just in the last lap or so, we've had contact down at turn 10. That battle between Benjamin Rutsch and Kevin Hodges finally came to blows into the hairpin, and then independently, the SPD race in LMP2, Dinat Fajardo has found the ball down at turn number 6, and I think it's likely carrying a fair bit of damage back to the pit lane here.
Yeah, and again, it is a case of a lot of these drivers getting caught out by the increase in intensity of the rain that's fell in the last minute, as Rubens Lorente has gone for a spin again and is backwards against the pit wall on the start-finish straight. No rear wing on the back of that Michelin 720S GT3. So that may be day done for the XPD racing driver. But one XPD racing driver that is not in a bad position right now and is going to be grateful for a lot of what's happened in the last few minutes or so is Alberto Garcia Blasco. Pedro Piquet pitting off that optimal one-stop strategy, and then Blasco's teammate Fajardo falling off the road has actually promoted Blasco to 3rd place in this race. And again, being down as low as at 5th place at the start of this one, dropping down into 6th, he's now got himself up into the podium places, and it means that sting from Andre Rosa, if things stay as they are, winning this race is certainly going to be a little bit less strong.
And it's a replay. This is Alexander Miller in the Taylor Mills racing car, straight on through the chicane, holds onto it on exit. Yes, of course, have a slowdown to bleed, but no damage there. This is Daniel Fascia into turn number 1, and just doesn't quite get it turned in. Straight on. And very fortunate that the gravel does what it does in these conditions. Manages to keep it out of the wall and just about gets back on the racetrack without too much drama. This is Benjamin Rutsch here coming through turn 12. Wide, and doing some lawn mowing. So I think this increased weather is certainly giving these drivers a lot of hassle. This yellow sort of stage 2 sort of class 2 weather system.
Class 3, definitely.
You had class 3, fair enough. This just so tricky, and I do want to mention, especially if the conditions get worse and the lap times get a little bit slower, as that's Leandro Mendez pulling into pit lane. I'm not sure that Pedro Piquet has bailed off this one-stop strategy. I think it's viable that they could get 55 minutes in on a wet stint like this. I think that might have just been an undercut to try and build a gap, potentially. But I think the plan is still going to be for Pedro Piquet to make that one-stop work, and we'll see if it does end up working. But to as well as get some damage fixed, I think that was the idea to pit as the window opened for the one-stop, get the car fixed up again, and then run this all the way to the end, taking advantage of the reduced pace of these wet conditions.
Well, that's where it's going to get a little bit tricky. Of course, the LMP2 struggle for stint distance, especially compared to the, well, I'll say brand new, the new GTP class in iRacing. These things would be able to get about an hour out of a stint in these conditions, but the P2s could only probably go 45, 47 minutes, even in conditions like this. There is a heavier band of rain making its way towards the circuit live, and that's going to drop the pace of the track even more. That might again work in Piquet's favor, but I don't know, stopping almost an hour short of the end of the race, I just don't think it's doable to go to the end from when he came down pit lane.
I mean, his plan of what he's going for and whether it's possible to execute on it could be two different matters, but I'm pretty confident that NGC wouldn't make a mistake like that of intentionally going for a two-stop in a race this short. I think he thinks he can make it. I honestly think he can make it work so long as he pays attention to the fuel number. But it's certainly an additional risk, and maybe waiting a couple more laps to get that damage fixed, especially given the pace that he was showing with that dented front end, just might have been worth it. That's a spin for Sonic Racing Team Blatz. Federico Faria, second place, is going to find a tap of the wall, but I think get going. It's a lucky escape, actually, for Kevin Harges in the SDK Racing LMP2 that was just behind in the S's as that spin happened.
Yeah, I do think that McLaren was assisted around a little bit by the SDK Racing LMP2. We're going to have a replay for you here. You see Faria gets loose just through the middle of turn 4 there with Hayes right underneath his rear wing. And I think at that point there was nowhere the Hayes could go, and it just tips that GT3 into a spin and into the barrier. I don't think any malice in that from the driver of the 82 at all, but just an unfortunate moment between two cars in different classes. We're going to rejoin this fight for P8 in LMP2. Just in front of Daniel Fascia is Pedro Piquet, who's on that, we'll call it the alternate strategy, but coming down pit lane so early, as actually Sebastian Isenberg has jumped onto that one as well, and it looks like Piquet does have some pace right now.
Isenberg hasn't jumped onto the strategy. It's been pulled back to pit lane. A massive moment in turn number 1 is going to knock one of the twin turn cars out of contention with a meatball, it looks like. And I think we'll have a look at what happens. It's going to look a lot like some of the instances we've had, just doesn't get that initial turn in, car straightens up, and unfortunately coming in with a lot more pace and leaving with no front end.
Yeah, I'm spotting something that we haven't seen at any point in this race so far either. It looks like we've got some standing water starting to form on the circuit. We've seen it at the apex of turn 1, but it looks like there's some down on the entry of 1 as well. And again, even though these are typically solo races, we know a couple of the teams do opt to make a driver change. I feel like it's pretty imperative to have a race engineer in these conditions, or at least someone that can be in a voice channel with you, whether it is your teammate out there on track or someone else that can spot the conditions as they're getting worse and pass on that information. Because again, as those puddles start to form in that heavier rain band that we've just seen, it's going to make track conditions even trickier to deal with, as I think both cars that we're watching there finding themselves off the road at turn 12, but they've spotted the standing water and pull way to the inside of turn 1 to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, you have two options really, and we've heard this from some people in the past. You either need a race engineer, or you need to have on in the background maybe a broadcast, someone to let you know what's going on, as someone who hasn't picked up that method. Remember, it looks like Benjamin Rutsch has found the barrier in turn number 1 in much the same way, and in much the same way has picked up quite a significant amount of damage. It looks like that left front tyre completely detached on the suspension. And so going to be day done for the number 58 as he goes back to pit lane here. So a lot of drama happening at turn 1 now with this increased weather system. And can be so much more cautious, so much more to the inside and compromise the entry just to avoid hitting that puddle and going straight into the barrier.
Well, whilst we are talking about the weather and talking about how it might be helpful information to have a voice on pit lane, or perhaps a broadcast in your ears, for the sake of drivers that are out there on track, we now bring you the ABN weather report. In Braselton, Georgia today, we will see light to heavy showers, precipitation currently at about 43%, with gusts as high as 21 kilometers an hour. Our temperature will be hanging around where is it? I can't see it on my overlays. It's disappeared. Track temperature will be hanging around 18 degrees Celsius, as all of that rain deposited on the track surface will lift all of the heat out of it and just make that tire life go a little bit longer. Do be cautious as the weather system starts to disperse for a moment in the next 5 minutes or so and bring a lighter band of rain onto the circuit that should see track conditions improve slightly, before taking a turn for the worse as class 3 rain makes its way back towards the surface and may bring with it standing water.
Sorry, as a viewer local to the racetrack, what's a Celsius?
track temperatures as low as 65 degrees Fahrenheit.
Thank you. It looked like the pit cycle is well and truly underway. Drivers making it to 47 minutes. We're going to see what the longest run is here. Separated now, Mesha 2, Daniel Fraser is still out on track for a 33rd lap of running. But if him and the sister car come in this time by, that could spell disaster for, as we were talking about earlier, Pedro Daniel Paquette. And actually, Daniel Fraser does come in this time by, so potentially it could be a lot more difficult to make that one-stop work than we were thinking. He does re-inherit the race lead here as Andre Rosa just rolls off the jacks and goes past the pit exit cone. Gap will be close to 10 seconds by the time that those drivers are back up to racing speed, but could still be one stop left to serve for the number 43 here, unless there is a lot more fuel save possible than what we're seeing right now.
Well, I think this is where it gets really interesting for NGC Rodriguez Gas as we see more pit stops get underway here at Road Atlanta. There wasn't only a difference in when both of those drivers came down pit lane, there was a difference in choice to change tire or not. Pedro Paquette opting to stay on the same set of Michelin wet weather tires that he started this race on, but Andre Rosa opted for a brand new set of rubber on all four corners of the car, so he's going to have to take a few minutes to get those tires back up to temperature and get himself back up to racing speed. Track conditions are set to get a little bit better in the next 5 minutes or so, so that should help the driver of the 42 out a little bit, but then it's just going to be a question of who has the better peak pace in these conditions. Will it be the older tires, or will it be the brand new sticker set of rubber? Only time is going to tell as that gap opens up to just about 10 seconds or so for the lead.
We still have one car out on the racetrack for lap 34 in the LMP2 class. It's Stefan Le Guin in the Squadron Leche Alpha car, up to P7 right now, but does have a pit stop left to take. The other drivers who might be in a bit of a question mark on whether they can make it from here, of course, Pedro Paquette in the lead, but also Leandro Mendez, who pit 5 laps ago in the number 14 Sonic Racing white car. It'll all come down to how far the Gwen is able to go on fuel as to indicate how easy it's going to be to get to the end for those two drivers. And unfortunately for both of them, that 147 car had taken that right turn into what is, I find it a very tricky pit entry at Road Atlanta at the best of times, let alone when that surface is super slick and hasn't had the same traffic that the rest of the racetrack has.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting differences between this track in sim and in real life. We saw Sebring get its IMSA makeover a couple of seasons ago to look a lot more like it does in real life. Road Atlanta having its art update a good chunk of time longer than that. I think LMP1s was still, no, it wasn't that long ago, was it? It was still GTPs when this track got its art rework. But still looking for a bit of a rules update, I'd say, as, oh, that's the SDK Racing car going for a bit of a back end, stepping out on the exit, the final corner there. But pit lane speed limiter starts a lot sooner in real life for IMSA than it does here in sim, with the pit lane speed limiter in sim being right at the entrance to the pit lane itself, whereas you'll see in real life that pit lane speed limiter starts about 3/4 of the way up the hill, like just after you turn in for pit lane. Makes that entrance just a little bit easier, a touch easier to manage, and means you're not having to push all the way down that hill to try and carry speed through pit lane, because there is a bit of a convenient gap in the wall before you actually get onto pit lane that if you do overshoot, you can squeeze the car through.
And we have actually seen, even in real life, incidents where drivers will make a mistake on the way in and end up coming back out onto the racetrack and causing an incident. So if those even higher speeds, there's so much risk available, but it looks like an incident for Alberto Garcia Blasco on the exit of turn number 5. That car does not look like it's pointing in the right direction. We'll have a look at what happened. Is it on that exit curve here of turn 5? Just dips the tires, doesn't quite get the traction on the right-hand side, and is going to slide very slowly into the wall. And you know what? He may have just gotten away with that one, but has lost a bucket load of time. Looking like about 20 seconds or so just bled immediately for Alberto Blasco, and actually has fallen behind the teammate of Didac Fajardo in the number 33 car for 4th place.
Yeah, Blasco done a great job of keeping that car on the road so far in this race, getting himself all the way up into P3 after what could be called a relatively poor qualifying for the XPD racing driver, starting this race all the way down in 5th. And with just under 40 minutes to go, that's where he finds himself yet again struggling with the track conditions, as they do look set to us. And I'm just having a look at the radar, Liv, and that's that yellow rain is starting to look a little bit more red.
Oh,
I'm having flashbacks. Did you do that? You did the Daytona 24 this year, but you ran a different slot to me, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure our slot stayed completely dry.
I was going to say you were dry end to end.
Yeah.
Whereas we had yellowy, orange, and red rain as Garcia Blasco goes off the road through the S's, cutting one of those corners all the way through the grass. He may have picked up a slowdown there, or it might just be an off track, just struggling with the pressure being applied to him by Leandro Mendez for Sonic Racing Team behind. Both of those cars actually cutting their way through the puddle up there at turn 6. Blasco does get it recovered. If there was a slowdown, he's got that one cleared, but Mendez only 0.8 of a second behind. But Blasco finding the grass on the left-hand side of the circuit, just losing focus for half a moment there, and the back end of the car just stepping out a little bit, and now he's looking all in his mirrors for where that number 14 is going to go. It is a disastrous couple of minutes for Alberto Garcia Blasco.
Yeah, and the thing about conditions like this is it's already so hard to find rhythm. Everything's changing lap to lap. You just got to trust those instincts that you have from laps and laps of practice of running in conditions like these. And the moment that there's a crack in that armor, everything can suddenly just start to spiral. You start to lose confidence in every single input, every single line, and you can very easily go from bad to worse here. He's got to try and refocus, but again catches that puddle on the apex of turn number 3, the one that we saw one of the GT3 spin on earlier. And this is just opening up more and more opportunities, you've got to think, for Leandro Mendez to try and recover into the top 5. While we're looking at this Sonic Racing car, we'll talk about the teammates currently 1, 2, 3 in GT3, because their pit cycle has started, and I think very soon could actually be over. They're all coming in on a very similar strategy, and that will be everyone having taken one trip down pit lane. The question is, for some of these some of these LMP2s, I should say, including Leandro Mendez, do they have to come down a second time?
Wrong series, Liv. It's PPS, not PEC. But yeah, the strategy way up in the air in LMP2. The only solace that might come the way of those P2 drivers on a slightly earlier stop is a question of how the pace is going to drop off in the next 5 minutes or so. We're just at the end of that band of much lighter rain, but the rain is going to pick up again, get back to that green sort of shade on the radar before it takes a very sharp dive towards a yellow band of rain, similar to what we saw earlier, when those mistakes did start to come in, because the track conditions are going to change very quickly out here.
Yeah, it can often be just a lap where that crossover happens. We often talk about it in terms of when it goes from dry conditions to suddenly needing those wet weather tires. It's not quite so quick the opposite way around. It can often be a bit of a smoother crossover from wets back to dries, but there's also a bit of a similar cliff from when you are comfortable on those wet tires and when you're really just fighting for your life out there. I think the benefit for the drivers that could be on that 2-stop are less that the pace is going to drop, and more that I think the pace gaps are going to widen a lot, and so even if they have to give up that time, they didn't have a chance to make those spots anyway. Pedro Piquet currently 30 seconds ahead of Mikael Sundström in P3. If he can put in some good laps here, might have a chance of holding on to second place behind his teammate Andre Rosa, even with that splash and dash that we think he might have to take at the end of this race.
Yeah, he's about 13 laps into his stint at the moment. I assume that it wasn't a maximum of 26 laps in the tank. But in theory, halfway through his second stint here in this race, which I'm trying to figure out the maths on that, puts him at about an hour and 10, an hour and 15 minutes gone in this race before he has to come down pit lane. Of course, that doesn't take into account, again, we're going to keep mentioning it because it is going to change the face of this race completely. It doesn't take into account how those track conditions are going to change once the heavier rain comes in. But it's certainly something to keep an eye on. But realistically, do I think it's going to drop off enough that he'll be able to stretch that tank an extra 15 minutes? Not really.
Yeah, and I mean, the pace drop-off has already started, to be fair. Drivers about 2 seconds off their fastest laps of the race right now, with, of course, the 122.2 from Pedro Piquet being the purple lap in LMP2. Currently running 123s, 124s at the front of the field, it seems like. Pedro, definitely strongest, running a second faster than the rest of the top 7 last time by. So is trying to stretch out that advantage as much as possible, and I think maybe might know that the fuel save isn't going to happen and is just trying to run away as much as possible at this point, use the maximum pace that he knows he has in that car.
Yeah, and like you said, Liv, he does look the most comfortable out of all the drivers in these conditions as well, in wet conditions. And if that does look set to continue, again, as that pace gap does increase when the track conditions worsen, that will be his chance to really run away at the front of the field. The gap between him and P2 currently about 17 seconds or so. It's still a slow pit lane here at Road Atlanta, but even with that second stop, it's going to be a splash of fuel and no tires. I'm trying to figure out exactly where he's going to come out relative to Andre Rosa, and it's going to be
he'll be behind Rosa.
Yeah, he's going to be behind Rosa by a good chunk, but it's how big that chunk is.
I don't think the concern's going to be that much about that. I think the game plan is going to be to try and preserve that NGC 1-2. That would be the third of the season, I think you said it would be.
And just try and fend off second for that team.
Okay, and just try and fend off Sundstrom and Zidat Fajardo behind to hold on to that second place. Again, that's a 33-second gap. That's right on what I expect that pit stop timing could end up being. And one thing I do want to mention as well, it seems like Piquet had about the same length of stop as everyone else, took a full tank of fuel after just 20-something laps. So I'm wondering whether it was maybe loading a setup that wasn't tuned for 100% capacity, maybe loaded one of the IMSA 45-minute setups, and so ran out of fuel early and had to come in to abandon that one stop. Maybe a similar story for Mendes, although his stop was a couple of seconds quicker than the rest of the field, an undercut. Probably the plan for the 14.
A little bit of contact between Victor Sonegren and Daniel Fascia down at the exit of turn 10. It has given Sonegren the chance to just move away from the front of Daniel Fascia's car a little bit, but you can see that rain starting to increase in intensity. A track that was bathed in sunlight not 30 seconds ago, now completely covered in cloud, as we are back in quite a heavy band of rain. And that's where we saw the mistakes start to come in earlier. So the question is, are we going to see the same sort of mistakes start to happen from these drivers? Remember, the track isn't just going to get damp and slicker and slippier. We're going to start to see puddles of standing water form. And I'll tell you what, Road Atlanta isn't a track I've got any experience at in the wet weather conditions. It's not a track that a lot of these drivers are going to have experience at in wet weather conditions. So they're going to be learning on the fly where the standing water forms. And I think that's what's been making it so difficult as the heavier rain bands have moved in early on in this race.
Yeah, lap time's already down into the 125s now, so 3 seconds off what was up to about second to 2 seconds lost just in the last couple of minutes. And we're only really just entering this band of class 3 yellow rain that's going to persist for, I'd say, about another 10 minutes or so before it starts to lighten up again. We're going to have conditions this bad and a track that I don't think is going to get to its fastest before this race ends, despite maybe getting into the end of the rain at the moment of the checker. There's just so much sand and water already on the racetrack, and not enough cars left standing to clear it.
It's Sonegren taking a bit of a defensive line down into 6, just coming under pressure from Daniel Fischer for Stemper and Ameka behind. There's some GT3 traffic to deal with as they come out of turn 7 for the 43rd time. The speed is going to be building for Fischer in that slipstream. Big amounts of spray coming off every single car in front as you see all of the cars that we're trying to watch locked in a battle disappear into that spray. Fischer going to have a GT3 4 company on the way into 10A and 10B and can barely see where he's going. He does miss that first apex. Gets it tucked in for 10B, a bit of oversteer for Sonegren. That's going to keep Daniel Fischer in this fight, but you can clearly see those track conditions are starting to get worse.
Yeah, and behind them, Connection lost in 5. But Mattia had the fastest lap for a moment of his race, but had a much longer pit stop. I think may have been caught speeding on the way in, and actually is going to dip a tire on the outside of turn number 1, so struggling on that recovery drive. Right now it is this battle for 7th place ahead of him that we are locked into. There are a couple of tenths. Daniel Fischer looks at the move maybe through turn number 4, but thinks better of it. They're gonna just be lined up on that inside curb through 5. That's dangerous, and just doesn't quite get the run he needs, and this is going to invite Bart Matcher back in now that he has cleared that traffic and gotten his wheel put under him. That's straight on. 4. Actually managed to keep it on the road, but already now's the pressure, but then was Bart Matcher straight on, trying to put the pressure on and just a little bit too heavy on the brakes in turn number 7. Everyone stays basically where they were, but a couple of very close moments in the final 10 seconds.
And that's the difficulty of these conditions. As the track worsens, you are coming into a worse or a slippier track than you did a lap ago, and you have to try and figure it out on the fly. And yes, it is all well and good being told that the track conditions are getting worse, but at the end of the day, the only person that knows what it feels like is the driver in the car. And Fischer and Mattia just struggling to find the grip out there on circuit at the moment. Victor Sonegren with the benefit of actually being able to see what's on the track in front of him, perhaps able to spot where the track is going to be a little bit slicker, and is taking a much more measured approach in terms of how he's getting through those corners. And it is working for that twin-turn sim racing driver right now. But Fischer finding a bit of grip at the top of the hill, managing to close back within 0.4 of a second. You saw from that onboard just how hard it is to see the track through the spray for Bart Mattia as he makes his way back up through turn 5, trying to do everything he can to stay on the back of this fight. I think ideally for Mattia right now, what he needs is Sonegren and Fischer to really start scrapping, and that might be the only way that he can find a way through.
Yeah, I mean, you saw how aggressive he's going to be trying to, so he knows that he is the fastest of these 3 drivers, but that doesn't mean all that much if the track is blocked, and if you can't find the braking performance on sort of the single line that everyone's managed to try out, if you have to go off that to make the overtake, you're not going to be able to easily get. You have to wait for a mistake from the cars ahead. Bart Matcher looking for it and gets on that rubbered in line, can't find anything, has to go straight on. The XBD LMP2, it looks like he's back down pit lane. Not sure if there's been an incident for him. No, back, just a timing glitch on our end. But a great job from Bart Matcher to recover that one after once again getting caught out trying to get a move done in a desperate spot on that number 47 driver.
Yeah, as drivers have gone through this race, they've been testing the limits of grip everywhere on the circuit. And of course, that slightly more rubbered in racing line into turn 10 has been viable for the majority of this event. But again, as the rain has started to really come down, it's made a line that everyone has built confidence in for the last hour and 6 minutes really gets slippy. So that won't only be a wake-up call for Bart Mattia, it's going to really inform Daniel Fischer and Victor Sonegren in front exactly where that grip is. There's been another corner that every time a driver has gone through it, I've been physically wincing. Down at the exit of the S's just before the braking zone for turn 5. So many LMP2s have been using that curb on the left-hand side of the track, and I'm just waiting for that moment where someone hits it, there's no grip on it, and they spin into a barrier.
They are going to be actually side by side. Daniel Feisker's defending from Bart Matthew again, looks to the outside, but is more tucked in off that rubbered in line, but still just boxed out by the S&M car. And he's going to continue to lead down the hill for another lap. 46 laps gone in this race, just 23 minutes left to go. Bart Matthew cannot find a way around and lost enough spots to fall from, I think, third position net right now. But just can't raise the second. Le Guin is off. That might be a meatball for the 147. But in this patch of P7, still just nothing to be done for Bart Matthew right now.
Yeah, this is your closest fight on track right now. It is a three-way battle for 7th place in LMP2. At the front of the field, though, it is still Pedro Paquette that leads the way. His gap has come down significantly to only 12 seconds. So we theorized that as the track conditions got worse, it might his pace may get better relative to the rest of the field. It looks like it has got much worse, but he does lead his teammate Andre Rosa, your championship leader in LMP2, by those 12 seconds as it just ticks back over 13. With nearly on pace is Mikael Sundström, finding himself in the highest position he's been in all season long since he won in Long Beach. P4 is currently occupied by Alberto Garcia Blasco. He's just looking to score as many points as he can in this event, as it's really not gone his way, with P5 currently being taken by Leandro Mendes. So those two have swapped positions. In GT3, it's Sonic Racing Team 123. Miguel Almeida leads the way with Federico Faria and Diego Teodoro rounding out those podium spots. Benjamin Rush just actually in LMP2, just off the GT3 podium, but he is of course 6 laps down off the overall lead. And still getting a little bit spicy in this fight as Fascia still trying to find a way through on Victor Sonegren, and it just looks like those opportunities aren't presenting themselves.
They just really aren't. I mean, he went straight on in the chicane last lap, rejoined behind Sonegren, but you can see all these drivers in the fight really pushing the limits of the braking conditions that are deteriorating rapidly. Drivers in the 126s now 127s, so about 4 seconds off what they were running in those earlier wet conditions, about 15 seconds I'd say off a dry weather lap in these LMP2 machines, and they're just having to push to the limit to try and find an opportunity. And so far it's ended up in drivers just taking those off tracks, taking some gravel back onto the racetrack almost, and it's still 8:47.5 in that battle for 7th place.
And it does look like it's set to continue this way. Not enough GT3 traffic out there on track to... Oh, never mind. Daniel Fascia finding a wet patch through turn 12. Spins around and backs it into the tire barrier on the outside of the circuit. Rear wing gone, rear deck gone, and some suspension damage. So he was in a really strong position to fight for P8 in class, but just finds a wet part of the circuit, and there was just absolutely no grip for him.
Yeah, I mean, it actually ended up on the... So you see, this is the earlier incident, I think a couple of laps ago, recovering from that. You've seen already struggling through this final sector. But then it seems like if we can get the one from this time queued up, and you see it's on the painted line. He's just lost visibility with the cars ahead, the GT3 as well. Did the left tire onto that latex paint on the outside of the racetrack, and it's over even before you hit the wall at that point. The moment you tap that painted line, that's day done.
That's it. That's what I was alluding to earlier. There's a huge difference in grip levels between the paint and the track surface, because even though there's rubber embedded in the track surface, it's still relatively porous and your tire can find grip on it. But we've all painted something before. We know how smooth that surface is relative to tarmac. The tires just have absolutely nothing to dig into, to bed into, to find grip on. So the second you touch that painted white line, especially on the loaded up side of the car, going through a very fast right-hander like that, those left-hand tires doing all of the work, they are just going to let go because there is literally nothing that they can find on a wet painted line.
down, does. Down 2 now, but Mattia has an uninterrupted line of sight at Victor Sonegren and has just about 18 minutes to try and get this one done. He's going to try to help out. I mean, he has the better visibility now. As soon as you pull out of line, you're going to be able to see the full racetrack. You see that look there. But Mattia, so much more confidence on the brakes with that additional visibility, but it's not going to be enough to actually get to the inside. He's going to be within a couple of tenths coming out of turn number 7. This is where that drag race helps. This is where you do want to be tucked into that spray for as long as possible. Just letting the twin turn car punch a hole in the air, and then which way does he go? Does he have the confidence to try and make the move on the brakes here? Sonegren protects the very inside, but Mattia goes middle and he's washed out, but a slide through the apex for Sonegren of 10A. Well, Mattia maybe has the nose in coming down the hill, but has to back out of it. But the pressure now very heavy on the rear diffuser of Victor Sonegren. And you've got to think, as long as Bart Mattia doesn't put it into a wall with this aggression, sooner or later he's going to be around into P7.
Oh, it's a big snap of oversteer for Victor Sonegren in the middle of turn 1, and that's given Mattia all of the impetus he needs to try and get alongside into 3. He does decide to back out of it before they get to the apex of that corner, but you can see from the body language of the twin turn sim racing driver's car that he is not comfortable in these conditions. In this battle is another moment of oversteer at the bottom of the S's, touching that curb that I said would catch someone out at some point. But it's going to be down into turn 10 where the position might be made yet again for Bart Mattia. We've seen how much more confidence he has in these slower speed corners, and he was able to get a couple of cutbacks through turn 10 last time by. It's not a good run off turn 7 for Victor Sonegren. Mattia looking to the left in the grass for a position. You can't pass there, mate. 10th of a second is the gap. What is he going to do down at turn 10? Will he be able to find any overlap, or will it be some switchback maneuvers again? It's a strong defensive line from Victor Sonegren, but it's going to slow him all the way down through this sector of racetrack. As long as he can keep it parked on both apexes, he should be able to hold on to that spot. But Bart Mattia is all over the rear end of Victor Sonegren right now.
15.5 minutes left for Sonegren to endure this fight. Just has to outlast until the bell, really. He's not able to pull away from Bart Mattia. There's an opportunity. Turn number 2, he's going to have the bravery. No, it's going to get covered off by the number 8. They're going to hop over that curb, turn number 2, using all of the racetrack into that puddle. And they're just weaving back and forth on the rear end, but still Sonegren holds on. How much longer can he make this work? Surely he can't withstand this to the end of the race.
Couple of GT3s up the road for Sonegren to navigate in the next few moments. Maybe going to play a factor in this fight for P7. Bart Mattia just backs off a little bit through 6 and 7 this time by, but it's really the apex of turn 7 where he closes up yet again. Both drivers picking up a touch of oversteer on the exit of the corner. Mattia hanging out in the slipstream of Artillerero for just a moment longer before following Victor Sonegren back to the right and then back to the left-hand side of the circuit, looking to peek at that slipstream nice and early and bait Sonegren onto a different part of the circuit. And it will be Sonegren that takes that massively defensive line yet again, parking the bus and giving Bart Mattia absolutely no way through. There's a bit of contact on the exit of turn 11. We've seen that before, as now Mattia has overlap into 12, but backs out of it yet again. Just doesn't have the confidence to actually make the move work in these conditions. The spray from that car in front, that is another GT3 just up the road. It's Jan Curbs, and he could play blocker for Sonegren. If Sonegren can make his way by on curbs before the S's, it could be a chance for him to just get a little bit of breathing room. Keep an eye on this, watch how it unfolds, but Sonegren can't get there. That Audi R8 GT3 is going to be in the way through 5.
Sorry to interrupt, but massive drama, heartbreak at the front of the field. Pedro Paquette does have to make the pit stop. Never mind that, we'll look at this for a second. But he's made that pit stop and he's sped on the way into the pit lane. He's going to fall all the way down the order. Bart Mattia does make contact. We saw him have that speeding penalty earlier, we think. Still trying to fight his way around. Victor Sonegren recover from that. We'll see how many spots Pedro Piquet loses from that mistake, and he could, quite honestly, end up falling into this very fight and end up making it a three-way battle for 6th place.
Well, one driver who won't be complaining about that penalty for Pedro Piquet is Alberto Garcia Blasco, who finds his way back onto the podium yet again, and it will keep that LMP2 overall championship lead fight very, very close. Piquet's still not off pit lane yet, as Mattia and Sonegren absolutely beating the doors off each other. You know what they say, if you've got fenders, what's the point in not using them? And Mattia is absolutely using them to the best of his ability right now. Piquet does exit pit lane 3.5 seconds in front of this fight. He's going to have 16 seconds to get back up into the top 5, but he's now got to take a moment to get himself back up to speed, reacquainted with the track conditions. Fortunately for him, I think Sonegren and Mattia are fighting a little bit too hard for Piquet to have to worry about them catching him anytime soon.
And if you're about Mattia, we know the pace that he's had all race long here. You must be so frustrated that you haven't been able to find this move despite so many attempts, despite so much pressure. Because if you'd have cleared a few laps ago, you've got to think, I should have been ahead of Piquet. I should have been taking advantage of that mistake and recovering my race just that little bit longer. Unfortunately, it's going to be just continuing this battle for 7th place. Piquet just a second and a half, I think, might have taken fresh tyres, so has to warm those up. And Bart Mattia, one more chance to maybe go and chase down the NGC car. He's going to pinch all the way to the inside on the entry to turn number 10, so to have the overlap. He's going to try and hook it round the outside. Loss of control near end for Victor Sonegren. There's a tap, there's a half spin. Mattia backs out to let it happen. I think Sonegren knew the mistake that was made potentially. Or no, actually he didn't have a flash on the exit. I think just couldn't quite get the performance off the corner. But it is Bart Mattia getting that move done in dramatic fashion. And now 2 seconds up the road is the next target, maybe the final target with 10 minutes left in this race. Pedro Piquet, after a strong start from pole position, or no, from leading the race for a long time, I think it was, started 6th, now they are back to 6th, and is going to have to defend that just a little bit longer from Bart Mattia in the number 5.
I think for Victor Sonegren, that was discretion being the better part of valor there after that double contact from Bart Mattia down at turn 10 after a couple of incidents of these two coming together down at turn 10. I think Sonegren just deciding that he actually wants to finish this race. Mattia has been so aggressive over the last 7 laps or so. And again, the twin turn sim racing driver just wanting to actually see the checkered flag just decides to let that one go. It doesn't look like the car stepped out anymore after that oversteer moment, after the contact with the 5. It was literally just a case of Sonegren getting out of the throttle and letting Bart Mattia by, maybe thinking there'll be opportunities down the road to get back through on the driver of the 5. Here is Alexander Miller coming down into turn 1, touching the standing water on the outside of the circuit and just goes straight on into the tire barrier. Front end falls off the car, as does the front left wheel, and that will be his day done after running up as high as P8 before the pit stop cycle.
But Mattia's done the same thing just now into turn number 1.
Wow,
we actually did Fernando straight on at turn 10, but this is moments ago at turn number 1, and it's just a carbon copy. Gets it a little bit more turned in, but doesn't get it stopped. It's a bit of a side contact for Mattia. I think he'll be able to bring that car back to the checkered flag, barring any more incidents. But that's Victor Sonegren straight back up into 7th place. I imagine, honestly, Sonegren was hoping there'd be a little bit of a scrap between Mattia and Piquet, but it's not to be. Instead, Mattia with a big mistake at turn number 1. It's so easy. We've seen so many drivers get caught out by that standing water as the skies are clearing up, but the rain hasn't quite backed off just yet. And I think really the last question mark with 8 minutes left to go in this one, we saw Leandro Mendez pit a little bit earlier than the rest of the pack. Question now, does the 14 have enough to bring it home, or can Pedro Piquet maybe recover for a top 5? Didac Fajardo is actually pressuring Mendez here a lot, so if there is a fuel save going on in the number 14 car, he's going to have to try and do that while also fending off an attack from a very strong SPD racing driver.
Well, this is about as far as the Sonic Racing Team driver went in the last stint. These LMP2's been pulling off 33 or 32 lap stints so far in this race. So it's going to be really tight, I think, Liv, on lap 28 of what should be 35 laps or so.
I think we saw 34 on that open stint from one team.
A lot of fuel save. It's going to have required doing fuel save all race long so far. So I think you're right about Paquette finding an extra position before the end of this one. But for Victor Sonnegren, I think he's very happy with the decision that he made about 3 minutes or so ago in this race, as he was right there when he watched his rival for such a chunk of this race go straight on at turn 1 and pretty much justified the choice that he made. But this has become your closest fight on track as we tick towards 7 minutes to go in this race. It's Leandro Mendez that we think has to come down pit lane one more time with Dijak Fajardo, who's had one heck of a race so far, getting tangled in the barriers quite a few times and just found himself a touch down the order and definitely not finishing as strong as he would have wanted to. They are going to have some GT3 traffic to contest with as they come down the S's. It is your GT3 race leader of Miguel Almeida. He's clear of the field by, what is it, a lap, I want to say? I'm trying to...
No, it's only 7 seconds ahead of his teammate, Federico Faria.
So that gap's dropped.
The next car that's 1 lap further back here. And, yeah, I mean, you saw backed off massively, maybe a little bit too much, honestly. It was in a little bit of a dangerous spot. Oh, no, lost the control of it through the S's, actually, and ended up recovering around there. So still could have mistakes happen, but has the margin to be a bit more cautious. Same cannot be said for Leandro Mendez, who is being hounded down by Dijak Fajardo, who went 1.5 seconds faster last time past start finish. And with maybe 5 laps left in competition, 6 minutes left on the clock, is going to have one hell of a job to defend this, as Fajardo has actually lost connection very briefly. We'll see if that's happened. Actually,
that's more than brief.
That's a disqualification for the number 33. Has picked up too many incident points, it looks like, or something, and is
definitely
completely off this racetrack.
Well, the wet weather certainly has bitten out there on the circuit. We've seen cars in the barrier left, right, and center all race long, including Dijak Fajardo. But at the end of the day, it is the incident point limit that bit him in the rear. Fajardo finds himself disqualified from the race here at Road Atlanta in that fight for P4 with Leandro Mendez, and he is going to be absolutely kicking himself after that one.
Yeah, it just looked like took a little bit too much of the entry of turn 10A maybe. And that was that. Just behind that, we had a big incident for Federico Faria in the Sonic Racing Team 219 at this very same corner. Has just about gotten away with it, it seems like, but takes a little bit of pressure off Miguel Almeida in that teammate fight for the win in GT3. Though unfortunately, we've not had much to look at in that one, but could still come down to the wire for the pride between the two of them. Dijak Fajardo is now going to fall outside of the top 10 with that result. Should hold on to P11 at the checkered flag, but actually, does PPS run the same rules where you have to take the checkered flag to be classified?
I don't actually know off the top of my head, but I'm sure we're going to find out as Leandro Mendez comes across the start-finish line to complete lap 31 of his stint. Theoretically, only 2 or 3 to go in that fuel tank. It's going to be a tricky job to get it to the end of the race, as you'd expect at least 4 more laps in this race. And the Sonic Racing Team driver will find himself losing... Oh, it's going to be a few spots, Liv, because Pedro Paquette is only 14 seconds back with Victor Sonnegren within 8 of that.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very tricky, I think, because despite the damage that's been applied to that number 5 car, there's still some pretty good pace. Again, we talked about how the aerodynamic elements aren't as important in these conditions. It's more about the mechanical grip you can find in those wet weather tires, and Bart Matcha still showing the strength that he has had all race long. as he is going to go running forward. As it looks like Leandro Mendez, in fact, has also picked up a penalty. I think has picked up that first stage of the incident limit, so might have been able to make it on fuel. We might never find out, because he's going to fall down the order, and I think could end up promoting Pedro Piquet all the way up to 4th position, potentially. He's going to stay out in the racetrack for this time, but he might end up taking that penalty post-race with just a couple of laps left in the running here. But late incident for Leandro Mendez is going to drop him down the order once again, and it's 25 for that first penalty, 32 for this qualification. And as it turns out, in conditions like these, that is a lot easier said than done.
Well, we were talking about that gap in GT3 and how it was about 8 seconds a couple of laps or so ago, but it is currently down to 3.4. Federico Faria looking like the stronger of the Sonic Racing team drivers in the heavy wet weather conditions. It's a 34.2 for Miguel Almeida on the previous lap from a 32.1 for Federico Faria. So he is making inroads on your GT3 race leader. Of course, both of these cars are teammates. They both run for Sonic Racing Team, and I'm sure they're going to want to maintain that Sonic 1, 2, 3 as it stands. But with the way Almeida's been struggling on the wet tires as the rain has started to come down, perhaps Federico Faria smells a little bit of blood in the water.
Yeah, I mean, ooh, that's straight on from Leandro Mendez at turn 10, really struggling. He's going to come down to serve that penalty. And you've got to say that Almeida has been struggling for pace in these final ones. We know that Faria's been pushing. That's why he has the damage that he does on the front end, clips the wall on the entry of 10A. But 3 seconds is not impossible, but it's a question of whether he can get the move done once he gets to the rear end. Victor Sonegren is trying to work around some traffic here. You've got an NGC car actually splitting the two, who's currently running a few laps down and just picking up spots in 4th place. But they are both on the same straightaway, those two Sonic Racing Team cars. This could be a little bit tricky by the end of this one.
Yeah, I'm just watching those lap times come in yet again, and Almeida did have an answer for Faria's previous lap and got a 32.4 out of that one, but then Faria was able to just eke out another half a second on his teammate. That gap ducking back down under 3 seconds as we come into the final 30 seconds or so of regulation. So it will be a question of, where is Andre Rosa? Is that white flag in the air? I have a sneaking suspicion, Olivia, that that white flag is in the air right now, because Andre Rosa is only a few seconds or so behind Federico Faria. So he's very quickly running out of time and may only get this lap to get it done.
Yeah, white flag is in the air, lap 63 for Andre Rosa, who leads the field by 30 seconds. The drivers of Piquet and Mendez are just coming to the start finish to take that white flag. For the GT3 battle, it's very much the same story. So one more time around, here we go. Does Pedro Piquet have a way around Leandro Mendez, who took that drive through and just about held on to 4th place on the racetrack, but now has a very hungry NGC car behind, looking to make his own recovery drive. And they're to snake down through. This is the battle for the GT3 leaders, just 2.7 seconds to be very close. Andre Rosa has come across the line. He takes the race win in that number 42 NGC car. Can his teammate make it not the 1-2 they were hoping for, but a 1-4? And it looks like, yes, he can. Leandro Mendez going to actually back off from that one, not give too much of a fight. A great run for the recovery drive, but then Andre Rosa has not put a foot wrong all race. NGC are going to take home a race win. Mikael Sundstrom is going to come home second behind, and XBD will round the final corner take home a podium spot in the GT3 classes. It is Miguel Almeida 3 seconds ahead of Federico Faria coming out of turn number 7. Just has to get this one final braking zone right, and it'll be the head of what is going to be a podium lockout the Sonic Racing team. Can Miguel Almeida be the one to take that top step?
We've seen 3 1-2 finishes so far this season, rounded out with a third in LMP2 as they all came across the line in the last minute or so. But as a completely unique stat in Platinum Pilot Series history, Sonic Racing Team will lead home a 1-2-3 finish with Miguel Almeida winning here in Road Atlanta. Federico Faria will follow behind by only a couple of seconds, but with Leandro Mendez finding his way into shot as well, it is gonna be the third place finisher of Diogo Teodoro, as what a dominant performance for Sonic Racing Team. And here's Andre Rosa for NGC by Rubis Gas, who wasn't the fastest driver out there today, but he was certainly one of the coolest heads, and that's what paid off for your LMP2 race winner today.
Yeah, we knew that these conditions would be so difficult. We knew it would be just about survival for these drivers. Only 7 LMP2s able to hold on and finish on the lap. Only 10, I think, able to finish without some significant repairs to take. But Andre Rosa, the class of the field, you see there's the Le Mans 66 moment for the both of them. It's going to be 1-4 for that team. A great recovery for Pedro Piquet. But Andre Rosa, not really much in the way of smoke, more spray coming off those rear tires, but a well-earned celebration after what must have been an exhausting race for the NGC crew and for really everyone out there.
Yeah, certainly some of the trickier conditions I've not only seen in Platinum competition, but certainly in iRacing as a whole. But with every car over that start-finish line, let's take a look at how the race finished out here today. We'll take a refresh of the graphics and we'll go one more time. So your overall race winner and LMP2 back-to-back race winner, Andre Rosa, brings it home in P1. Followed home by Mikael Sundström for nearly on pace by Race Bowden. That podium being rounded out by championship challenger Alberto Garcia Blasco for XBD Racing. Fourth place goes to Pedro Piquet after a late race error and an extra stop brought him down the order, and Twin Turn Sim Racing's Victor Sonnengren making very smart decisions all race long to bring that car home in P5. But Mattia, after going straight on down at turn 1, could only muster a P6. He was followed home by late stopper Leandro Mendez for Sonic Racing Team. The first of the SNM cars is Carlos Pereira, who brings his car home in P8, and he's followed home by SCK Racing with Mark Aguilar on board that car when it came across the line. Your top 10 in LMP2 was rounded out by SRP Racing Team Tiffany Dano on board that car, with Dijak Bajado and Benjamin Rush finishing 11th and 12th. 13th place in LMP2 and probably your first non-finisher will be Alex Miller, as Daniel Fascher, Stefan Le Guin and Sebastian Isenberg will round out your non-finishers in LMP2.
It is a Sonic Racing Team 1-2-3 in the GT3 class. Miguel Almeida taking the supremacy there by 3 seconds over Federico Faria, and Diogo Teodoro ended up 1 lap down, a perfect spot for that formation finish. Artillerero for NGC by Rubis Gas took an extended repair down pit lane, but still recovers to finish in 4th position ahead of Jan Kurbs in the Right Engineering Esports blue entry. And disappointing results, but still maximizing what they could out of this race. Behind them, early retirements for the XBD Racing GT3 of Rubens Lorente and the Right Engineering Esports orange car of Philip Spez, and Adrian Hanovitz didn't have to play just 1 lap in this one and finish in the final position of the race.
As so often is the case here, we are going to get a chance to talk to our class winners, and first of all, it will be NGC by Rubis Gas's Andre Rosa.
Hey guys, hello.
Andre, congratulations on another strong result. I'm trying to fact check myself here. Does that make it your third race win on the season and a back-to-back race win as well?
No, I think not. At least it's my second win of the season, and last round it was Paquet who won.
That was it, back-to-back with Aragon, yeah. Taking the championship lead there as well, and of course extending that championship lead tonight. It was 1 point coming into this race, but with Alberto Garcia Blasco finishing still a very strong third place finish, but it does open that gap up a bit more from 1 point. So that's got to give you at least a little bit of confidence coming into the final two races.
I mean, 1 point is 1 point, but it's still a very short lead. I mean, I think it is. If I DNF in a race, or I don't know, I crash or something, I can still lose it. So I need to be careful with it.
Well, you say that, but the conditions out there were certainly some of the trickiest that I've seen in Platinum competition. I think it got wetter and drier about 5 or so times throughout that race. Did you have someone in your ear all throughout that one telling you how the conditions were changing, or was it just all by feel?
No, it was just all by feel. And talking with my teammate, with Paquet, we were just like, okay, now you can push, now you can. But yeah.
It certainly seemed to work for you. I think it's safe to say you probably weren't the fastest driver out there on track today, but I think this is one of those races where cool heads really prevailed, and I think yours was probably the coolest out there.
Yeah, I mean, Paquet was faster than me, but he loaded their own setup. He went with IMSA fuel, so no full tank, That kind of destroyed his race, but yeah.
Saying that, I've got to give Liv some credit there because she absolutely called that one. She nailed that one on the head. So fair play, Liv. Round of applause. With 2 rounds to go then, again, with that, it's not a comfortable championship lead, but it is a championship lead nonetheless. How do you fancy your chances on this America's swing?
I mean, I don't know. Interlagos is not my strong suit, but maybe I can do something with it. Daytona, we'll see. I've never driven the LMP2 there, just the GTP. But who knows, maybe I can grab it,
Well, if you can find yourself on the more setup for the LMP2, you're probably going to be quite comfortable there. There's a little bit of a hint for you coming into the final round. But Andre, of course, as always, you've been in the booth before. You know what's coming next. If you've got anyone you want to thank, want to shout out, now's your time to do so. Congratulations once again on that race win.
Thank you. I just want to shout out all our sponsors, our team sponsors, and my teammate Paquet and team manager Nelson. Also, Artur Loureiro was in the GT3, and all the guys at Sonic who are also our friends, And that's my late. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Andre. Good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much.
So that was, of course, NGC by Rivers Gas's Andre Rosa, who takes his second win of the championship and goes back-to-back, the first driver in the championship to do so. Next up, we are going to have Miguel Almeida, who won in GT3, and Liv is going to have a quick chat with him.
Hello. Yeah, hello. First of all, congratulations not just to you, but to the whole team, locking out the entire podium in the GT3 class and surviving all the way to the end. Talk us through how difficult those conditions were and what the strategy was inside the team to make that one work.
Yeah, you said it very well, just surviving, basically. My teammates that started in P1, he kind of selected the wrong box, so he started with slicks. But yeah, it was just a matter of not dying in the start of the race and trying not to get killed by LMP2s. It was unexpected. We were expecting like 15% of chance, so maybe a light drizzle here and there, but nothing like this. So getting to the track and seeing 50% heavy rain or medium rain, let's say, kind of a big curveball for this race.
Now, you came into this round 11 points ahead of Rubens Lorente and 25 ahead of your teammate. Of course, both Lorente and Jan Kurbs failing to finish in this race or finishing way down the order. You taking the win ahead of that teammate. You have about a full race lead heading into those final 2 rounds of the season. So talk us through the confidence that gives you and how you approach those fast rounds. Do you go points racing, or do you keep swinging to try and get that third win on the season next time out at Interlagos?
Yeah, I don't take it as a already won championship at all. Rubens and his teammate, I think is Gerard, they are very fast as well. So they have been quite good racers this season. So I'm not laying back and resting for the couple next races. It sucks that they lost the car so early on in the race. I was expecting quite a bit of racing for sure. But yeah, let's keep on trucking and see if I can, not Interlagos because I absolutely hate that track, but for Daytona, yeah, let's see if I can win that or not, or at least be competitive.
Well, that sounds like a plan. I have a feeling I know who the main characters in this final section will be, but of course, I will hand it over and ask anyone you want to shout out, say thank you to. The floor is yours. Congratulations on not just the win, but a podium lockout for Sonic Racing Team.
It's props to the entire team. Props for my teammate that started on the wrong tires and allowed me to have a bit of free and clean air in front. Props, and even to Leandro on the LMP2s, he did a good job. Sadly, he didn't have enough fuel to finish P5, but I think it was his best position finish this season. So congratulations to him as well, and yeah, hope to see you in Interlagos, but I'm not very sure about that.
Well, good luck over there, and we'll see you out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, see you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
So that was Miguel Almeida, your championship leader in GT3 and two-time race winner in Season 2 of the Platinum Pilot Series. Liv, that race gave us absolutely everything we could have wanted from a multi-class wet weather race. I cannot believe the amount of times that the level of rain fluctuated in 90 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, this is the joys of this Tempest weather system. Every time we get to see it in action, not just in sort of a flat level, but when it has that variance, that ebb and that flow, it just always keeps you on your toes, and it's always fantastic to see how these drivers manage it. I think I'm glad that I wasn't the one that had to deal with it. It looked almost impossible to keep control in, but great work to everyone who got home to the checkered flag, and yeah, congratulations to those race winners. Really putting a confident hold on the lead of those championships heading into the final two rounds.
Yeah, I think that was the interesting thing, is that your race winners out there tonight were your championship leaders in both classes, so really showing their skills out there on a very difficult set of conditions and proving why they're the championship leaders. However, we continue this America's swing for the final two rounds of the championship, as in 2 weeks' time, we make our way towards Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache, also known as Interlagos, one of the most famous circuits in motorsport. I feel like I say this for every track we go to at this point, but of course, the scene of so many dramatic Formula One season finales, and became home to the 6 hours of Sao Paulo of Interlagos in the World Endurance Championship, which saw a fantastic race last time out. And we are very much hoping for more of that in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much once again for joining us here at ABN for our coverage of the Platinum Pilot Series. We've loved bringing you this race from Road Atlanta, but for now, it's goodbye from me, goodbye from Liv, and goodbye from Carmen. We'll see you next time.